All right. Welcome to the Solstice Recovery LA podcast. We got some exciting things that are happening. We just opened up a media studio over in West Adams, so the podcast location will be changing. So that's super exciting. And yeah.
Today, we have a good friend of mine, Mike Martin. Welcome. We're happy to have you, bro.
What a name, Mike Martin. What a name. I love that name.
To hear
Mike
your
Martin.
story.
2 first names. I love it.
He's got a great story.
I come from Hicktown too, and there was a NASCAR driver called Mark Martin.
Oh, nice. It's like it's alliteration too. Mike Martin.
It's like an alter ego.
I like names that have, alliteration in them. Like
everybody
Mike
trips
Martin.
out on the 3 first name things too, like a serial killer.
You need to
first names.
put this right at your chin. Sorry.
It's okay.
Right, like
Check.
just like right up at the chin. Perfect. Just like that. So you have a third first name?
Everybody does. That's the trip. Is really all it is if your last name is like a first name. Because everybody has a first name for a first name and a middle name.
Yes.
So it's really just the last name.
Yes.
And Martin being like the guitar, a lot of people's first name is Martin. So I have 3 first names that could be totally interchangeable.
Yeah.
And put them however you want.
You ever play with that?
The middle is George.
I like George.
George Martin.
Michael George.
George
Michael.
George Martin. George R.R. Did you make Game of Thrones?
George Martin Michaels.
Did you write Game of Thrones?
I did not.
George R. That's the author. George R.R. Martin.
I'm also one of one who's never seen Game of Thrones.
Really?
Yeah.
Never seen Game of Thrones.
Do you ever get curious about that?
I do.
Are you
Really?
Are you Game of Thrones curious?
I'm Game of Thrones curious. That's exactly
So what's
right.
stopping you?
That's
You like saying that you're one of one. Haven't seen Game
For
of Thrones.
anything,
Yeah.
too. For anything, for the
That's the
record.
G in LGBTQ. I don't
Game
know.
of Thrones. Game of Thrones. I'm Game of Thrones. I'm Game of Thrones
Lesbian
avoidant.
Game of Thrones.
Oh my God.
My
bi,
social
trans.
worker diagnosed me as Game of Thrones avoidant.
Exactly.
And it's been a challenge to deal with it, but I'm a survivor.
Good.
I'm a survivor.
Good. I'm glad.
I am curious about it. What stops me is the time commitment.
The standout. It is a time commitment.
I know that it's going to be 70 hours of my life
Oh yeah.
just to get into it.
It's huge. It's a huge
And
commitment.
I feel like you'll just get into it.
Yeah.
I feel like you would.
And I will get into things.
Yeah.
I'm a kind of an all or nothing guy.
That's fair. Right.
By nature.
It's nice at the end of the night, at the end of the day, just not even have to think about what show you're going to put on.
Right.
And you just throw that show on.
Yeah.
You know, for a solid year to 6 months to a year, depending on how quickly you watch it, that's just going to be the show you put on. You know, at the end of the night. You know? Fall asleep halfway through, pick it up the next day.
100%.
Easy.
100%.
Very
It's like a big
easy.
long movie.
Exactly.
It is.
I saw Joker 2 last night.
Terrible, right?
Rough, dude.
How
Yeah.
was it?
Real rough.
Really?
It's bad.
It was rough.
It has an audience score and
Rotten Tomato.
Rotten Tomato have the same. They're both 36%.
The thing
36.
The thing that I don't like about the Joker and how it was marketed was it was not marketed as a musical. It just came out and nobody knew it was a musical, and then boom, you're in the middle of a musical.
In hindsight, I should have seen it coming with Gaga. Once it was her 7th song of the film, I was like, oh, I should have seen this coming.
Yeah.
I'm the idiot for not realizing that this was going to be a Gaga musical masterpiece.
Yeah.
Which I think the music was dope. The
Really?
songs were pretty sick, and I was thinking about the songs as they were playing. I would check out of the film and think of just listening to this. It was dope music. They wrote some pretty sick songs for that film, but it was every 7 minutes.
Yeah.
They broke into song.
Yeah.
And it was just what?
That's crazy.
What about Joaquin Phoenix? Can he sing? Is he getting down?
No, but it works for him. It works for him that he can't sing.
Right.
Yeah.
In the songs.
It's just I don't know. I don't care about the comics too much, any of the comic movies, but Batman I hold near and dear to my heart. And
I'm a big comic DC Marvel universe guy. I think
I hate all the Marvel movies. Hot take.
Really?
They're all hot
one of
steaming
one right here,
piles
dude.
One
of
of
dog
one.
Are
shit.
you sitting here and telling me that
Every Marvel
that
movie
when
is a hot
Tony
steaming
Stark
pile of
snapped
dog
his fingers
shit.
with the Infinity Stones and said, "I am Iron Man"? You didn't lose it in the theater.
I didn't even watch
lost
that.
it.
I didn't even watch that movie.
Wow.
I will not subscribe to this fucking steaming pile of cash grab, money grab.
After
by
Endgame, they are
Disney.
that. After Endgame, they are
by
that.
Disney to pander to China to be like, hey, you know what? We're just gonna make this.
Oh wow, you're deep in this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That movie made the Marvel movies make more money overseas than they do domestically.
I believe it.
So they're not making those movies for American audiences. They're making it for Chinese audiences. They do the best in China, and they'll actually make a different movie for China than they will for here. They'll change the script and they'll change the movies.
Right. I understand the criticism about the Marvel films that the plot lines are all identical. They're all hero's journey plots. They're all like you have this hero or small group of heroes or whatever, and then the bad guy comes, the dragon, and there's adversity, and he has to find himself, or they have to find themselves.
I love the heroes plotline. They're just written so badly. The jokes
don't
are
think-
so bad.
Not
They're
all
like,
of them.
they're all
Guardians of the
terrible.
Galaxy, you gotta.
Guardians of the Galaxy
is
is
good.
terrible.
Come
I just
on.
like-
Guardians is great, bro.
I
All three of those movies hit. All
I am
three of
Groot.
them. That Batista,
Yeah.
dude, the best character I think for that type of movie, because he was just like.
What's his name again in that film?
Groot?
Strong guy? No, the Batista
Drax.
guy. Drax,
Yeah, Drax the Destroyer, but he was an idiot. That was the best part.
Totally.
It was I think Guardians of the Galaxy was one of those where it was
Yeah.
it was different from all the other ones.
I never watched it because I protest against. I won't give him my money. I just won't give him my money. I won't give him my time. I have seen Marvel movies, and I've been dragged by people to see Marvel movies, and I'm just either fall asleep in them or they're just so terribly boring or played out or just dumb that I'm not being fucking pretentious about it. It's just the way that they make them. They churn them out, lock and key. They know how to. It's a turnkey method.
I feel like you're being kind of pretentious
for them to make money.
This is great, though. We should talk about politics next because we can all disagree but sit in the room and have a conversation. Let's just make this a politics thing.
No,
No, I can't. We cannot do that.
we'll lose followers.
Lose people on
yeah,
either
that's
side of the mile.
Outside issues.
outside issues.
Marvel inside issues.
Marvel,
Politics.
yes, Marvel is
Kamala Harris,
100%
outside
inside.
issue.
And Game of Thrones inside issue.
The Game of Thrones and Marvel are inside issues because if you disagree with me, you're not going to be sober. That's it.
That's
Oh,
crazy.
hot
Damn,
I'm
dude.
just kidding.
Damn. All right, let's get into this though, Mike. We want to hear your story. Want to
Great.
hear about where you started, what it was like for you coming up, how you made the journey to getting sober, and what you went through, and what your life is like today.
Yeah, sweet. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
Of course.
Super honored just to be asked to show up, hang out, talk, give my 2 cents on almost anything. So really appreciate that. I come from a really small town, but in the state of New York. So to this day, when I tell people I'm from New York, they're like, "Oh, which borough?" And I'm like, "Nah." You don't. There's a whole forgotten part of that state that nobody ever thinks about, and it's 4 hours north of New York City, central state to northern state New York, and
Is that the Poconos? Is that where the Poconos are?
I don't even know where the Poconos are, dude. There's a mountain. There's a couple of small mountain ranges compared to many mountains. They wouldn't be called mountains really, but the Catskills and the Adirondacks are the wilderness places that are beautiful, and they're these mountain ranges, and I call it the land of 10,000 tiny towns because I hear about towns that were an hour away from me to this day and have no familiarity with them at all. It's oh, have you been to whatever, Poughkeepsie or Madison or this, and it's all these little teeny tiny towns up there. But it's interesting because there were it was conflicting. It was a really agriculturally centered community, a lot of manual labor. If you made it big, you opened a roofing company because you worked for a roofer and you had a couple guys of your own and you drank at the bar after work every night.
Yeah.
That was those were the guys who really figured it out,
Yeah.
And we're in the state of New York, but there's Dodge Ram pickup trucks with the tailgate painted as a Confederate flag.
Okay.
So it was this real redneck hillbilly vibe, but geographically it doesn't fit because we're like way northeast, but it was
kind of like Thousand Oaks.
It is kind of like Thousand Oaks. It is.
Sure. So
know?
I graduated from public high school in a class of 52 students. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody's house was several miles apart from each other. Like there was no walking down to the store or any, like everything you needed to do was a 15-minute ride in the car, no matter what. And you know, talking about like the childhood and sort of like, I'm really interested today in developmental transitions. Like we all go through these transitions in our life that are kind of predictable and anticipated, like from toddler to child, like 5, 6, 7, where you're like walking, talking, having real live thoughts, starting to register some memories that are going to stick around forever. And then from childhood into adolescent or preteen, and then into teenager, and then teenager into adult, which is where we see a lot of people getting stuck these days or what have you.
Big time.
But there's these transition points in life that kind of like mark these major moments, and 9/11 is a good example because everyone remembers where they were at when they learned what was happening in that moment. It's like it's almost like a pause time in the timeline of all of our existences. Like, where were you when that went down? I was in Mrs. Cook's 4th grade class, and she got the call on the thing, and she like started freaking out, and we were all like,
what's going on?
What is happening? Like, did her dog die or what? And then she like hangs up the phone and like tries to figure out how to like convey to us without, you know, freaking everybody out. Or it was just like this pause moment. So I kind of have like that story where I'm like, dude, like childhood was cool. I don't really remember too much like trauma or like hardship or anything like that. But I know as I kind of transitioned into preteen, I started to identify that it felt like other kids had a lot more than I had. And like I felt like I was the poor kid or we were the poor kids.
You started the comparison.
Thank you. Exactly. Like
for
comparing myself to other people and like my neighbors across the street, the closest people to me. It seemed like they were better off and they had like 150 acres across the street and like dirt bikes and snowmobiles and like all the toys and stuff like that. And I was just like, man, my family fucking sucks, dude.
Yeah.
Like these guys are like
so that hard. That happened in your teenage years?
Some like probably 12, 13, I started to like feel that way, and like all these other kids have stuff that I don't have.
And you start seeing that like in school, like the cliques, if they mean something, you know what I mean? Like, oh, all these people seem to have all this stuff, and they all get along,
exactly.
And I don't even necessarily feel in place with the people that I hang out with. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And then that comparison in your head is just like a nightmare to go through, especially at that age.
Exactly, you know? Right. So a lot of my behaviors, and I obviously didn't know this at the time, but like looking back in hindsight, like a lot of my behaviors started to be dictated by this comparing myself to the, you know, keeping up with the Joneses, like, oh, the kids across the street are getting dirt bikes. Like, I want a dirt bike. I got to go find a job. So I started working as soon as I possibly could, and saved up $700 and got a dirt bike.
Nice.
And like got my own. And I couldn't even touch the ground. I had to like lean it up against my parents' like shed and like climb onto it and like start it and like take off. And feeling really gratified about that for like a month or two until it like sort of wore off, and then it was like, oh, but their stuff's new. I got this old beater dirt bike and it's like never enough. Since, you know, all that stuff started like
comparison is a thief of joy.
Exactly, bro.
And you know, it'll always never be good enough.
Exactly,
it'll never be good enough. Real quick, just push it. Let me see if I can adjust it for you because it's really important.
I can drive through this here. Let's see, just go up.
Yeah.
Great. No, you're all good, dude. You're all good.
Yelled at by Jordan.
I'm happy.
Mics weren't close enough.
I'm happy to participate in the tech.
Yeah.
Comparison is the thief of joy. At least it certainly was for me.
Oh, 100%. That's why the social media makes kids so sick nowadays, is because they're comparing their lives to people's advertised best lives.
People that they don't even know.
They don't even know.
And I want to make sure that we spend time on that
Absolutely.
too, because I have so many thoughts about that, whole, like where this world is at today.
We love talking about that. So by all means.
So for me at that time, the short version is that I certainly had a higher power, and it was you.
Yeah.
And it's like sounds cliche and weird, but it was so true for me, and I didn't even know it at the time that how do you define a higher power other than the motivator of your actions?
Sure.
My comparison to you guys motivated my actions to have what you had, to sound like you sounded, to be included. I was craving connection and didn't even know it, blah, blah, blah. All the things that we hear about all the time with like kids who have a hard time earlier on. And somewhere in there, weed started to become a thing that the proverbial you were doing, like whoever it is that I was like looking at, trying to model off of so that I could feel okay and fit in. Weed became a thing. Alcohol became a thing. That's where it started. 12, 13, 14 years old, right in that same time, that transition. And by the time I was in my teenage years, 15, 16, those kinds of substances that people were using started to change a little bit, and you know what I mean, and especially like skate park kids, BMX kids, you know what I mean, like those were like the cool guys that I would like really want to like be fitting in with and whatnot, and they started partying in other ways. And I used my first opiate at 15 years old. It was in a pharmaceutical form. I am a product of the pharmaceutical boom of the early 2000s, and
especially in those like Appalachian hills,
dude,
Appalachian
towns,
Oxy Central,
exactly,
when you can still smoke them,
exactly,
all up and down the East Coast, man. Just like it's terrible.
It's so funny. I don't know why my brain goes back to politics again. I swear I'm not a political guy, but the first time Trump ran and had the Make America Great Again hats, I got online on like Custom Ink or whatever and made a hat that looked just like his, but it said "Make OC80s Real Again." Sober in LA, and put it in the back windshield of my car so everyone could see it.
Oh yeah,
like
that's good.
What a ridiculous. It was just I thought of it and I was like, oh, that would be funny. Fucking hilarious.
OC80s,
But yes, I'm a product of the real OC80s.
Better than fentanyl, I'll tell you that. These OC80s didn't kill you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it was the real thing. As like a teenager, a baby boy who had no business like being anywhere near these kinds of hard substances, and just had, I didn't know anything about opening up a hose clamp and sucking the coating off of a pill and shaving it off and doing an eighth of an OC80 at 15, 16 years old. And an eighth of this pill would have me puking for 2 hours. The most miraculous feeling puke ever.
Right.
But still, like by any normal person's observation, seriously concerning situation to see a teenager vomiting for hours, nodding off on opiates. And it was just, it didn't feel that abnormal to me or to us. And it's just, it was the thing that was around, and we had all gone to DARE, but didn't really give a shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I did it thinking, oh, I see why people get so addicted to this.
Yeah.
It felt so good. And I find it really important not to bullshit that it's like that I'm this like, oh no, the drugs were just all bad. Like, it felt so good. It's like indescribable. It felt too good.
It's so good that you ruin your life.
It felt too good. And I remember at that young age thinking, oh, I get why they warned us about these things. I get it. It's true. It really is that great. So like, it's interesting. I could like investigate and extrapolate like my consciousness or like my ways of thinking and being at that time, and what was I trying to avoid. I remember when I went to treatment, my therapist was like, what were you using because of? There's an underlying cause. There's a pain that was there that you were self-medicating or running from something, or there's some reason why you used. And I was like, I don't want to be a bad therapy client, lady, but like, I really don't think so. Like, I was down to try it because other people were trying it and it was awesome. And that's really why I did it. And that's why when I cracked the big book and somebody took me through it and it said something to the extent of alcoholics drink primarily because they like the effects produced by alcohol.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that was like, that's it. That's me. That's why I did it, because I liked the effects produced. Now, more mature, I'm 32 now, and I can look back on it and say, no, like there was some emptiness. I just wasn't aware of it. So it's really hard to talk to somebody who's in the middle of that about there being some emptiness. At 15, I would have been like, what
get the
fuck out of my face.
You have a spiritual malady.
Yeah.
You'd be like, what does that mean?
Like, get out of my face, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
You sound crazy right now.
Yeah, like and now all those people that look at you, they're like, you need Jesus or some shit. It's like, fuck, they were kind of right, you know?
Totally. They weren't wrong.
Really what it was, like, not Jesus specifically, but like definitely higher power, you know what I mean? Like filling that void.
I just didn't know it. So basically, like, the war story is pretty simple. The pharmaceuticals started to get taken away. My crowd that I would be with, you know, primarily got really, really condensed down to mostly just opiate addicts, because nobody else really wants to hang out with opiate addicts, but like other opiate addicts, because you got to like keep your bag clutched and make sure, you know what I mean? Like, we're just not trustworthy people. It's interesting. There's a lot of unfair stigma and whatnot out there, or prejudice, I guess I should say.
What do you mean?
There's a lot of unfair prejudice in the world. I'll say that as a generalized statement. And it interestingly, like, addicts might deserve their prejudice
for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I'm the 100%. First in line to say, like, I was not to be trusted, and people were absolutely right to not let me into their homes.
I mean, people, it says in the big book too, it's like, people don't get us, you know, people aren't compassionate towards us.
Right.
They like, and they don't think this is a sickness.
Right.
They don't think what the addiction is a disease.
Yeah, but sickness or not, disease or not, right? Like, we're still untrustworthy.
Yeah,
we still suck.
You're still
you know?
Yeah, but they just like, you know, and we're not to be trusted. I remember the first time I got high, I lied through my teeth about it. It was on weed. Or it wasn't the first time I got high. It was the first time I got caught smoking weed.
Right.
My brother went through my phone. He found text messages to a friend of mine named Jose about smoking blunt. Fucking smoking blunts. Jose was the homie, dude. He had like a lot of weed on him all the time. He had weed plants growing in his backyard. But he would scam me sometimes too. Yeah. You know.
I mean, hey, bro, you're the white Jewish kid that.
I remember I was in a pinch to get some weed, and he like sold me. He literally just grabbed weed off the plant and sold it to me. And I was like, oh,
green?
Okay. Yeah, what?
Green? Yeah, like off the plant?
Like literally took the weed off. It was still wet when he gave it to me. And it was just like, oh, this is like, all right, let's see. And I was like really in a pinch to get high.
Right.
And I was like, let's see if this does anything.
And it didn't.
Did not.
No. Did you try like the oven on the lowest setting
yes,
trick?
I did. We tried doing the microwave
the toaster
trick.
oven.
Yeah, the toaster oven.
Oh my God.
That's great.
So yeah, you know those.
I do. I know all the tricks, dude. I used to heat a shitty little apartment with our stove and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, we would have green weed, like wet weed, and be like, all right, we got to figure out how we can smoke this like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah,
we got to like get this stuff dried out. It's so funny. One of my most shameful acts is that I stole my mom's engagement ring for heroin.
Jesus.
Okay.
I used to steal my mom's jewelry too.
Yeah, dude. But this was like the last piece left.
Yeah.
I had like already run through stuff, wasn't really welcome around there, at least without supervision, and had gotten myself in front of the box yet again.
Yeah.
And having been an opiate addict for some time now, I knew the sickness was coming. It was already starting. Like, I was starting to like have the discomfort, and I knew in the next 3 hours or so I was going to be moving into like a real dope sick.
Yeah.
And I'm standing over my mother's jewelry box and looking at this last piece left, which is her engagement ring, and being fully aware of and conscious of like the thought that I don't want to do this. I know I shouldn't do this. It's not like some disease was on me and I thought, oh, this is okay, this is fine, blah, 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 like, or any of that stuff. Like, I knew that I didn't want to do it and that I shouldn't do it. And once I got sober and reflected on that, I used to make a mistake by saying I didn't have a choice. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a choice of if I was going to do that or not. Once I got into an actual process of recovery and learned a little more, both about myself and that process of recovery, I found some truth. And the truth is that it's not that I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. The other choice was to be dope sick.
For sure.
And to not steal my mom's stuff. I didn't have the power in that moment to make any other choice but the one I did.
For sure.
It wasn't a choice issue. It was what I was capable of in that moment in my choice issue. I didn't have the power over the disease of addiction that I would have needed in that moment to not steal that saint of a woman's last piece of jewelry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like when I started to read things in the 12-step program, at least, of like drinking essentially because they like the effect produced, powerlessness in the choice over drink. It was like all of it made a lot of sense to me. And thankfully I got some good mentorship in the 12-step world. But, you know, essentially I did what I had to do to have an experience with desperation and hopelessness. I found myself alone. I was 22 years old, had already gone to jail a couple of times, had one felony charge that I was currently in the process of like trying to work my way out of not getting a conviction and to like settle on a plea deal on a misdemeanor, but it was a grand larceny. All my legal stuff, thievery, all of it, all of it.
Yeah.
Every single legal thing I've ever had, totally, theft, burglary.
Okay,
How much of that was like, how much help did you have from your parents through all that process?
Legal process.
A fair amount. The time I wound up in jail for the big boy, the grand larceny, where it was like looking like I could really
do some time.
Yeah, end up sometime, like I don't know, a year. You know what I mean? Like I had some petty stuff already, and it's like, oh, the junkie stole again. Like they easily could have thrown.
And New York is like that too, right?
Yeah,
I think they're a little softer, right? They're like California, where they're like soft on crime.
It's interesting. It can be tricky. It happened in Colorado. We don't have the time. Like I had moved with an uncle to try to get straight.
I did the same thing in Colorado. I moved to Colorado. Yeah.
That
with my uncle.
That crumbled, and I ended up stealing again to support a habit, and then got popped there. So I actually got the charge in Colorado, and I called my mom and told her I was from jail, and told her I was in jail, and she was like, "Sit there." I was like, "You got to get me out of here, Mom." She was like,
"Nah,
like not happening."
That's
So like. And my answer to that, like, did I have help from my parents? Is like, yeah, that was super helpful for me.
Okay,
like when they didn't welcome me into their house anymore, that was super helpful. I didn't know my mom was an Al-Anon for a couple years before I even developed a habit because of my dad. I have an alcoholic father.
Okay.
As well. So my mom was like wiser to all this stuff than I ever knew. And so I got to 22 years old somehow, and had overdosed more than a handful of times, been Narcaned by EMTs or friends, or woke up in the hospital or whatever. AMA'd myself several times, like, because I need, now that I'm in precipitated withdrawal, like, and they Narcaned me and I feel terrible, I need to get out of here and go get loaded again, like all that kind of weird stuff. I wasn't eating because that cost money, and money was mostly only for one thing for me at that point.
Go get a McChicken, maybe.
Exactly. That was kind of like the route, was like, one dude's got $60, one dude's got a car, we're heading out of the small town to the slightly bigger town 30 minutes away to cop. We're going to stop at the McDonald's, get a McChicken, a cup of water, stop at the Walgreens, get one rig, and you know what I mean? Like it would be like all like
you had it mapped.
$60 for heroin, $3.50 for everything else.
Right.
And like go, you know what I mean? Yep. I had the experience I needed to have to eventually get to the place where I was like, dude, how did this happen? that was the big realization that I can remember, was that I like stepped outside from a dope man's house. I had just washed all my cottons. I had graduated to IV heroin use for a couple years at that point because the pharmaceuticals ran out. The legislation or whatever was happening changed, where all the pharmacy stuff was done, and all the people that used to have pills had dope. And the very first time I ever did heroin, I remember what the guy said to me. He said, "At least you won't get sick." And I was like, yeah, that's true. And I snorted heroin for the first time. That lasted like 3 weeks before I saw somebody injecting it the same amount that I would be snorting, and I'm barely getting well, and he's on a full nod. And I'm like, I'm fucking up. I got to do this different. So it was like these constant adaptations, graduating me up and up and up till I was the thing that I thought I would never be. Everybody, like nobody at 8 is like, oh, I'm going to be an IV heroin user one day. You know what I mean? And soon enough, there I was. So kind of like from 19 to 22, I was a daily IV heroin user, and was never like this big glamorous story of like, oh, I sold tons of weight, so always had money or anything like that. I was a fucking gutter junkie from day one. It was like GameStop games. It was like stealing Xbox 360 games from the neighbors, taking them to GameStop, going to Home Depot or Lowe's, rooting for receipts and doing the receipt hustle thing. It was always just trying to come up on someone, like hustle someone, or whatever. It was all just it was $40 at a time.
It was a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week struggle to get well, stay well. Where am I going to get high? How am I going to get high? Who am I going to get high with?
Exactly.
How am I going to get the money? All of that.
Exactly.
It's constant. It's the obsession of the mind.
Vin Diesel said something in the Fast and Furious about living your life a quarter mile at a time, and I lived my life $40 at a time. Every day I woke up and it was like, where am I going to find $40?
That's it.
That was the only marker. It was like the next $40, bro. A really insane way to live.
That's going to make a great clip.
And it's the truth, dude. It had become my whole life. It was just like finding the next $40, which really amounted to a heroin coupon. That was it. That was all it was good for me. And it all happened unbeknownst to me. So the fast forward version is I got to that moment where I stepped outside of that dope man's house, had just washed my cottons to get well for the last time. I had nobody to hit up for a place to crash. I had nobody to hit up for anything, for any kind of support. And I was standing outside in upstate New York in September, and it was starting to get cold. And I was like, how did this happen? Like, how am I in this position in my life that I never thought I would be in, where I have a serious chemical dependency and nowhere to stay? Like, what the fuck? And I called Mom, whom I'd already stolen everything from. And I called her. I had a prepay phone, and I called her, and she picked up, and I said, hey, it's me. And she hung up, and I called her again, and she picked up and didn't even say hello. And I said, I'll do whatever you say. I had never asked my family for help up to that point. I had known friends who went to rehab, came back, and were immediately getting loaded with us and stuff. Like, I just, like, it never had crossed my mind to ask for help until that moment of, like, I have no business deciding anything for myself right now. I almost knew it intuitively, where I was just like, I did this. I made decisions that put me in this position. I have no business saying what the decision is now. I need someone else to think for me. And nobody had ever taught me that kind of thing
That's
before.
a very intuitive thought to have for yourself. Like, I mean, that's like moment of clarity.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what it is.
And it almost was born from shame. Like, it was like, how did this happen? Oh. I fucking did this. You know what I mean? And I was like, Mommy. Like, I don't know what happened. You know what I mean? And when I called back that second time and I said, really, I'll do anything. Like, I don't know. I need help. And she came and picked me up, and she started looking for programs and blah, blah, blah. And she's a state employee. So we didn't have bread as a family growing up, really. I never missed a meal. It wasn't like poverty, but lower middle class at best. You know what I mean? And but she was a state employee, so she had that insurance card, and It was in 2014. I suspect I was like call centered or body brokered to Los Angeles. I don't know. And thankfully I landed at a spot that the people who worked there were decent. I just never got pulled into that world. And by the time I was about a year sober, I started hearing about all that was happening, and was
right
like,
when Chris Batham was doing his shit.
Sure. I feel like I very easily could have just been sent there. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I feel very blessed to have wound up with good people out here. And I've talked to tons of people who wound up with total fuck off shitheads.
Yeah. Really bad situations.
There's a lot of bad treatment environments out there.
Oh yeah.
So I feel really lucky for where I landed. The last thing my mom bought me at that time was a plane ticket and like a new prepaid card for my phone. Like, so I had like 20 minutes of talk time on my prepaid flip phone burner from Walmart. I never had a cell phone other than that kind before I got sober. And I landed at LAX. This is the furthest west I'd ever been. I was 22 years old. It was in September of 2014. And I got picked up by a tech at the treatment program that was going to take me. Dude who's still a homie to this day. He's now a therapist and his career's blown up and whatnot. But at the time he was a tech, like basically holding a sign with my name on it. And I showed up for rehab.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how I landed here. I did do about 2.5 months of residential treatment, and I had a pretty miserable detox because I refused
subs,
all the meds. Yeah, because I had bought them off the street before and abused them previously, like at times where it was dry, and then dope dealers had subs, and they were like, "Here, take this." Like, you just buy subs. It was like kind of commonplace. So when I got to rehab, and I don't have any bad blood with the psychiatrist being like, we should do it. He was like, we need to do a rapid sub taper. Otherwise you're going to be hurting. And I was like, no, I'll hurt. I'm not doing that stuff. I'm not, I can't be doing that. I bought that from people, you know, and used it kind of on the street. And, I kicked real hard. I had kicked pretty hard before, bro. So crazy. Shane Moses. That's so wild. We were just talking about it. I'd kicked pretty hard before, so it was like I hated kicking, but it wasn't terrifying for me anymore. I had done it before and knew I would be okay, and I wrapped up in a blankie for 7 days and sat out in the sun when I was cold, and then hid in my room when I was hot, and my palms were sweaty and everything hurt, and I went through the kick. The kick is miserable. And I got to the other side of it, and they started bringing us to AA. Yeah. And they started bringing us to AA, and they said, you got to get a sponsor guy. And I was like, okay, I'll get a sponsor guy. Like, whatever, you know? And, by the time they exited me, I was heading to an affordable sober living out here, and I had made the decision that I want to try to stay here. When I went in, it was like, oh, I got to do a month in this place to try to get rid of this habit and then head back to my life. And by the time that 30 days came up, I was like, I should stay another 30 if they're willing to keep me anyway. And then by the time that one came up, I was like, I want to try to make a life for myself. I had gotten enough separation between me and the thing where I was like, I actually have a real opportunity here to possibly have a life.
For sure.
And I don't want to go back to the cold shithole that I'm from.
Really,
you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. It was like, sobriety and meetings and young people in Los Angeles and palm trees. It was
popping, bro.
It was sensory overload. It was sensory overload.
It was awesome.
Big time.
It was a great time, in my opinion. Like, because I got sober in 2014 too, and it was like just so many young people. Like, we would go to like 3 meetings in a day and just like bullshit. Stay at like, you know, Crave Cafe till like 3 a.m, just doing nothing, you know, but like staying sober. Right. Like, and that was like the beautiful part. It wasn't this like, I don't know, like this game that it is today, I feel like, where it's like, in my opinion, I feel like it's a little different. But that also could be from, you know, I'm older, I've been sober a while, you know what I mean? And like,
it could be that we're also just not like plugged in with the young people crowd anymore. And
I was going to say, somebody getting sober this year.
We're not plugged in with the young people crowd. We're not staying out to, we're not.
We're not going
to those young people meeting and fellowshipping.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Compared to today, how many treatment centers were there in 2014 or even when you got sober in 16?
There's a hell of a lot more treatment centers right now, I'll tell you that.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like, even if there are the young people, they're all in treatment. You know what I mean? So you can't really like have that same type of fellowship where it's like, you know, you're all getting sober together and like going to do stuff together, right? Like you're restricted in a way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I do feel for people who come out here like I did too. I consider myself very lucky. I see 90% or more of the people that I see show up new in some of the meetings that I go to in treatment. And now there's a new guy on this treatment center's van that shows up to this meeting every week or whatever. 90% or more are gone within 2 months.
Oh, yeah.
It's a challenging place to live.
It is.
Los Angeles. It's
It
a
is.
challenging place to make a living. It's a challenging place to come from an addiction with no real skills, no real work history, and figure out a life for yourself.
Yeah.
Rent is basically $2,500 a month minimum in LA. It's like it's tough.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't want to say I feel like people are sold a false bill of goods, but I like talk to some of these guys. I work with a lot of dudes in AA, and I talk to some of them who are coming here and are hoping to be able to stay here. And eventually, you know, we're meeting and they're like, oh, I have to go home in like, I don't have any resources out here. I can't do it.
Yeah.
And
It's tough.
because
It's not easy.
the recovery community here is so rich and powerful, and it's not other places. And and it's a whole different world in, you know, Indiana. In some dude's hometown where he came here from to go to AA there.
Yeah. Or, yeah, exactly.
You know?
or anywhere. There's no place like LA, like Southern
LA.
California specifically, where it's like so abundant with meetings and recovery. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and that goes for any type of 12-step
Right.
meeting. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's all here, and it's so different everywhere else you go.
Totally.
A lot of places don't clap,
Totally.
which I didn't know.
Right.
I was at a meeting in New Mexico, and I was like, they were like, oh, we got so-and-so for 3 years sober. I was like, yeah. And I look around, and everyone's looking at me like I'm crazy for clapping. I'm like, my bad, you know?
What's wrong with
My
this
bad, guys. Yeah.
So it's so cool because at the same time, I feel like we as human beings have this like innate power, and everybody who comes here is eligible to possibly stay if they want. But it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of relearning. And AA, I love AA. I'm the biggest AA guy ever, but AA is really, really great when it comes to a spiritual solution for alcoholism and addiction, for building life skills that are different from that of a person in active addiction. AA is not the greatest place to go, nor is it trying to be the greatest place to go. There are these subgroups like Pacific Group and some of these others that really put a lot of emphasis on taking a commitment, showing up early, suiting up and showing up, dress up for the purpose of wanting to prepare newly sober people for a life. And I actually appreciate that a lot, that specific group does that, but that's not like an AA wide thing necessarily.
No, it's a sect.
And again, nor is it trying to be. AA is for alcoholism, and I've always appreciated how clear the book is about that we actually think you should go get a doctor or a therapist for some of these other issues, that we don't have an opinion on that.
Do your thing. Yeah.
AA is not trying to be a fix-all for everything.
No.
AA is trying to be a spiritual solution for the disease of alcoholism, period, end of story. What we see here in Los Angeles is AA meetings becoming a catch-all for all kinds of developmental challenges and mental health issues.
Very true. But that's because treatment centers bring all of their people there.
Precisely.
And treatment centers are a catch-all for all of those
Precisely.
things. Like you can go to treatment, mental health, or addiction. And a lot of times they're not being separated from each other.
And as soon as you go in
Right.
for addiction, you get diagnosed with all this other shit.
Well, because that's what bills. That's what that's what's
Exactly.
like billable too.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's like they're not keeping their addiction people separate from their mental health people, and their mental health people separate from the addiction. Because a lot of times addicts have mental health, and mental health people have addiction.
Right.
It's almost like the chicken and the egg. What came first, the mental health or the addiction?
Sure thing.
You know,
Sure thing.
They go hand in hand with each other.
Sure
But
thing.
it leads to these treatment centers now catching all these people because now they can widen their net, make more money, and they all bring them to AA.
Right.
And somebody who's dealing with depression and schizotypal tendencies may not relate to AA or may not, but
Exactly.
they're being forced to work the steps.
Exactly. And in the AA literature, it says we believe our way of living has its advantages for all. The AA program is like, come to believe in a higher power, make a commitment to live by that higher power, take a inventory of your handicaps, all the ways that you suck, basically, which is all of us. I have tons of ways that I suck. Admit it, clean up your wrongs, continue to take inventory, pray and meditate, and help others. It's like, everybody should live that way.
Yeah,
I have no
spiritual principles.
I have
you know
no
what I mean?
problem with that.
AA didn't invent that either. That was way before AA. Carl Jung and Bill and Bob just put it into the 12-step format.
Exactly.
And which made it
They
really
almost
digestible.
They almost dumbed it down.
Really?
They almost just dumbed it down for
Yeah.
drunks.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's I completely agree.
It's just really simple spiritual principles that have been told throughout the years. It's a moral psychology that's been remade.
And even before Jung, as far as I know, it's been taught to me. I can't totally verify that the Latin term for alcoholism, which dates hundreds of years before Jung, maybe thousands, I don't know, is spiritus contra spiritum. The spirit of man at war with the spirit of alcohol. They knew that this was some kind of spiritual issue that the alcohol abusers were having.
That's why they're called spirits.
Yeah,
Alcohol.
beer, wine, and spirits.
spirits.
Exactly, totally, dude. Like the
100%.
threads are all there. I agree. It's not like this new thing, and I do believe it has its advantages for all, and everybody could pick up a thing or two from the AA toolkit and try to live a better life and a more meaningful life and what have you.
That's why the 12 steps has been now for overeaters, sex addiction, gambling addiction.
Because it works.
Debtors Anonymous.
Coda.
Al-Anon. Al-Anon.
Yep.
Every single thing that you could think of, there's a 12-step format.
They have
for it.
EA, Emotions Anonymous.
Emotions.
Wow.
Which is
I'm
great.
powerless over my emotions.
Yeah.
Why not? And dude, as an IV heroin addict, I shot dope because it worked. I do the 12-step work because it works. I just celebrated 10 years of recovery. Did you too? Or
In
is it coming up?
January,
You just did?
Yeah.
It works.
It works.
It works.
I just
dude.
celebrated 9 years in early September.
Great, dude.
So,
Like I promise I wouldn't keep
works.
doing it if there weren't results.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't keep doing it.
No,
Right.
I'm
it
just
doesn't.
not. I'm a results driven individual.
Yeah.
I do stuff that works for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like that's the
100%.
reason why I do it. And AA, and I'll probably I don't know. Maybe the most fascinating part of it for me is that it's free.
Yeah.
Name another social organization, even though it's not an organization, it's actually deliberately disorganized, which is how it works, sort of. Name another group.
Yeah.
Totally free. We just want to help you. You know what I mean? Like,
Literally the
And
epitome
that's
of altruism.
unfortunately the thing for me is it's unfortunate that people have schemed off that.
sure.
Yeah.
Right? Think about all the grimy sober livings, all the grimy treatments. It's because
I'll take my shots at Russell Brand right now.
Yeah.
Dude rewrote the 12 steps, putting fuck in there, and sold a book for profit on Amazon. It's like $40 for that book. And it says, step 1, admit that you're fucked. Step 2, come to believe in a power greater than yourself that could get you unfucked.
That's Hollywood late night.
That's the Hollywood late night step
That's
format.
the Hollywood late
Do they
night
use
step
that
for-
book?
No,
it's not.
they
Dude.
had
It's a crazy meeting
Yeah.
that happens. That
They heckle, right?
They
Dude,
heckle,
yeah.
they crosstalk, they'll fucking tear your shit apart while you're sharing.
Yeah,
dude.
it's crazy.
It's a funny meeting. Not for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Don't go there if you don't have thick skin. That's for goddamn sure.
Yeah.
But that's
You could?
you good?
Would you lose?
You know what I lost.
Do you want us in?
It's all good.
You vape?
Yeah, it's all good. No, I'll find it. It is a good practice for me to be off for a little while. Anyway.
We're talking about addiction. Where the fuck is my vape?
Dude, and first one to admit that caffeine and nicotine are still processes for me. It's been super challenging, and nicotine has shown me the true nature of addiction because I don't even get high on it.
No. It's just...
Dude, every morning, caffeine, people tell me caffeine is a drug, and I'm like, no, it's not, because I'll go without caffeine though. One morning I'll go, or a day without caffeine, and I'll just feel completely different.
Right.
Just feel so sluggish.
Right.
Just
Do you get the
very,
headache?
Very fatigued.
I get the headache. I get the migraine.
A little headache. And all I have every morning is 1 cup of coffee.
Right.
That's all I have. 1 cup of coffee, that's it.
Right.
I'm not taking any more caffeine throughout the day.
Right.
But the making of that cup of coffee in the morning is so ritualistic.
Yes.
It's so ritualistic. Kind of
I
like,
bet you have a
kinda
French press.
Fucking
pour over.
Dude,
You're a pour over guy.
no, I'm fucking put it in the drip coffee machine.
Oh, okay.
That's it. That's all I do. But it's just ritualistic, waking up, putting it in there, dumping out the old grinds from yesterday, like brewing it. Very simple, but very ritualistic.
Like mixing up a shot.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly what I was gonna say.
Tying off.
Exactly. It's just
totally,
like, or like fucking loading up a bong rip,
Right.
mixing up a shot. You know.
Make sure to corner it, dude. Don't fry up all the keef.
Yes,
Exactly. You know.
Hey, corner hit that
100%.
dog. Come on, dog. There's 6 of us, bro. Like,
Corner it.
Do you have the keef catcher with the nickel in the
of
grinder?
course,
dude,
bro.
I haven't heard that in
for
forever.
some reason, that was like, oh, this works. We put a nickel in there. You know what I mean?
Just
It's like,
it loosens it all up, makes it easier. You know.
You got to use a nickel though, because of the metal, the kind of metal they use. That's
Yep.
what somebody told me.
yes, yeah, no, I know exactly.
You ain't
what you're
gonna use
talking
no
about.
fucking Abraham Lincoln penny off the
Right.
street.
Oh my
you
god,
know?
dude.
Ridiculous.
No,
Yeah.
but it's just like, yeah, you don't know how like addicted you are to little substances, and we all have our vices, you know.
Totally.
Even- but just they're not mood or mind altering
Right.
substances.
Right.
I'm not getting a fucking euphoria, from
Yeah,
still
but
function.
and
because people will come to me all the time and be like, "Oh, you're sober, but you still use caffeine. You still do nicotine. That's a drug." I'm like, "Yeah, but bro,
I just
that's
tell those
not-
people to shut the fuck
I'm
up.
like, you have no idea. That's
Shut
not
up.
that's not heroin. That's not fucking alcohol. That's not benzos. That's not weed. You know, I'm not getting a euphoric high that doesn't allow me to function.
Yeah, but
Right.
do you like the effect produced by coffee?
Of course.
Well,
Of
then
course.
that's- then they're
course.
right.
And burritos. I love the effect produced by a burrito.
I love
you know what I'm saying?
I love
Yeah.
it.
You know?
Dude, you know what else I like the effects it's produced by? Breathing oxygen.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, totally.
Like, I'm alive.
Yeah.
It's interesting, dude. For me, like I do see it as an addiction, the nicotine. Like I'm kind of, and there's different camps or schools of thought or whatever. But like I'm just like, bro, check it out. I went into rehab smoking a pack a day of Marbreds at 22 years old, and left rehab smoking 2 packs a day Marbreds because all we did was smoke and go to group
Yeah.
and go to AA. I just smoked cigarettes all day every day. I left rehab chain smoking cigarettes like like an old woman in her kitchen.
Yeah.
And I made this transition to the vape all these years ago. I've been off cigarettes for 9 years of my 10 years sober, but like still on the vape. Even that transition was challenging for me. The nicotine addiction is challenging, and I've never stolen from somebody because of it. And it's so socially acceptable. It's why the science points toward nicotine addiction being harder to kick than an opiate addiction. There's literally peer-reviewed articles outlining how nicotine addiction is X times more challenging to deal with. It's socially accepted. It's in the back of my mind all the time. I sit here for 20 minutes and I'm like, oh, where is that thing?
Yeah.
There's some doctor who I can't name or cite or quote that frames all or most addictions as dopamine addictions. We want to feel good.
Yeah.
And it's normal, dude.
It is.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
And that's why, dude, like I used to cringe, but it was like, that's why people say, oh, weed is a gateway drug. It is to an extent, right? Like you like the effect produced so much that you're willing to check out what's going to hit it harder.
Yeah. What's
you know
the
what I
next
mean?
level up from here?
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it is that gateway because you're experiencing this shift in your mind, this chemical like release where you're like, oh fuck, and then you find out that it's a chemical release. You're like, what can do this better?
Right.
Dude,
You know?
I never knew a heroin addict that started with heroin. Let's just
Right.
say that, you know?
Yeah.
I never did.
That's what it is.
And same with alcohol as well. I never, you guys, it's alcohol and weed are the gateway drugs because those
Yeah.
are the most socially acceptable.
Yeah.
Right.
100%. But nicotine, if you do it, like I don't think there's a problem with it, health wise. If you do it in like Zins, because it is a neurotropic, and it's been it's just all about the consumption of it.
Right.
What's the health? That's where lies the problem of nicotine is like how we consume it. Cigarettes are terrible because it causes lung cancer.
The tar and carcinogens.
Tons of studies led to causing.
I think transdermal too is the other vehicle where they're like, this is the safest way to use
like
nicotine.
A patch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like nicotine doesn't kill you.
Right.
Yeah. All the other stuff that does.
Yeah.
Is nicotine still an addiction though? And when I think of freedom, am I proud that I'm like searching for this thing in the couch while I'm on the podcast? Like, oh, where did that thing? If it was a patch, I would be like, where the fuck is that patch?
Yeah,
it's time for my patch to go on.
Yeah.
And it's like, to keep it a full buck, dude, like I want to be free. And these are things that are still works in progress for me.
Yeah.
And like having the self-compassion to just stand up in that and own it and be like, I'm not going to try to make some excuse for nicotine or caffeine or whatever. I'm just still in my process with it, and that's okay. Because like I'm still in my process with burritos and pizza too, and like it is what it is. It's okay.
An all-you-can-eat sushi bar.
Oh,
yeah.
They have a really
dude.
good all-you-can-eat sushi place in Torrance.
I'm not going
That's
to
like the new
Torrance.
dope house. Dude.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
get me up out of the all-you-can-eat sushi place, bro.
They have a good all-you-can-eat Korean barbecue and all-you-can-eat sushi place in K-Town too.
Got it.
What part of town do you live in?
West LA, like Wilshire and Bundy.
Okay, all
Like
right.
West LA proper. There's like the west side, but then there's this
like-
little neighborhood. The zip is 90025, and if you look, they call that West Los Angeles.
Nice. I used to work out at the LA Fitness right there.
Bundy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bundy location.
Yeah.
Do you
That's
work out
my-
there? No.
No.
Where do you work out?
I don't really work out,
You don't work
admittedly.
You look like you're in good shape though.
Thank you, bro.
You know?
I try to take good care of myself. I have 4 basic fundamentals for men's health.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fitness guy. I lean a little more longevity focused, but I'm not a longevity guy really either. But if I had to like pick, like I'm a little more concerned about living a long time and feeling good than like being like fit and whatnot. Gallon of water a day. These 4 things too are without question. Like they have to get done every single day. And then from there, everything else is like cake for me.
Yeah.
It's like these 4 fundamentals have to happen every day. Gallon of water a day. Prioritize protein. What I mean by that is make most of what I eat protein, like a clean protein. So if I'm feeling extra hungry and I'm going to go to Chipotle and get a bowl and get brown rice, meat, bean, some vegetables, whatever. If I'm feeling extra hungry, I'm going to make up for it in meat. I'm not going to get extra chips or something. Like I'm getting more meat, if anything. So gallon of water, prioritize protein, 30 minutes of walking a day, and consistency with the first 3.
Yeah.
Gallon of water, prioritize protein, walk, and be
Consistency.
consistent.
I love that. It's
3 times a week, don't cut it.
It's all about
Every day.
Yeah. And it's all about making sure that you could be consistent with your practices, because a lot of people, they'll get into the fitness journey and they'll go 0 to 100 real quick and they'll burn out like that.
I talk about that
because
all the time, bro.
They
don't see the
keep
immediate
consistent,
result.
and they can't keep consistent with it. They can't keep consistent. It's all about consistency and discipline.
Yep.
Like motivation will open the door. Discipline will keep that door open.
Right. Right. So when I have a meal, I'll eat all I want, but it's going to be pretty clean food.
Yeah.
I'll eat until I'm full and can't move, but it's all ground turkey, and you know what I mean? It's
So
just
when it's
quality.
pizza and burritos.
So I say those things joking because I have struggled with them. I'm proud to say I've been abstinent from gluten for about 5 months.
Okay.
I cut out all. That's not true. Wheat, like primary wheat flour products, bread, tortillas, pastas, I haven't had for 5 months.
Interesting.
If stuff has it in it, I'm not like tripping about it.
Yeah.
But I don't eat dessert and bread or any of that. Like I go to Pitfire. They have this cauliflower crust pizza. I'll crush a whole pizza.
Yeah.
But if it's
Sounds
cauliflower
delicious.
crust,
Yeah.
I found mental health issues with gluten. I would eat dinner at night and it was always between bread or wrapped in a flour tortilla for like years. And I would literally feel the symptoms of clinical depression after I ate. I would feel slow and lethargic and like my blood was thick and that I was useless, hopeless, and never going to be happy.
Really?
Those were, I would like feel that after I like ate a burrito from Leo's or something like that. And I would just be like, oh, and like slow and bad for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I did a juice cleanse and I was like, I think it's the flour. I think it's the bread, and I think it doesn't agree with me. So I would go there and then just get the meat in a bowl and just like eat the burrito contents without the flour and feel great.
I'm all about the bowl.
I would feel fast. I would feel
bowl.
good.
I always get a burrito bowl.
For me, it was the wheat, but I'm not going to like sit on a pod and be like, wheat is bad.
Yeah,
you know, it's like, I don't know what works for you.
Yeah.
It was worth experimenting for me to see what this was all about and making adjustments to determine what the right kind of prescription was for me to feel good. Exactly. Just like you're saying, that I could be consistent with, that would feel good for me, and like it didn't feel miserable and all this stuff.
I think that and this brings me back to another thing. It's like, I think that as addicts and alcoholics, we have to be doing every single day that moves us in the direction of recovery for our biological, our psychological, and our spiritual, because we suffer from a bio-psycho-spiritual disease, obsession of the mind, physical allergy, spiritual malady.
100%.
And we need to be doing something just a little bit every day to move the needle forward in terms of recovery in every aspect of that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Otherwise, we're just going to feel like shit about it.
Absolutely.
You know? And that's what I think is working towards God rather than away from God.
Right.
You know?
Right. And in a lot of ways, self-love is love of God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
exactly.
like I'm taking care of me so that I can be there for God's other kids too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if I feel like shit because I ate a pastrami sandwich for the 4th meal in a row and I just want to lay down and be alone.
Yeah.
Silence my phone.
How useful am I being?
That's why we trust God and clean a house before we help others.
Exactly.
You know, because we got to clean ourselves out and make sure that we're a clean vessel that God could work through us, so in order to help others.
Exactly.
It's not going to be a clean vessel if it's all clogged up with bullshit.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And we can't help anybody else.
And that was a learning curve for me, dude, because I got out of that treatment program, went to the most affordable sober living that I could find. My grandma put up my first 2 months, and I had a backpack full of clothes in Los Angeles and no skills. I got to figure this out. And I got 2 months paid for of the cheapest sober living in town by my grandma. Again, run by fantastic people, thank God. Like sober living owners and managers who gave a shit is what really carried me and saved me.
Yeah.
I love saying that AA really carried me and saved me, but it would have been nil if I didn't have somewhere to live with decent people.
Yeah.
It just had to be. And they were like, check it out, homie. Here's where the DPSS office is. Go get yourself EBT and GR. Here's where the bus stop is. While you're at DPSS for your first time, you could try to get a Metro card while you're there and get yourself up and down on the bus. So I was taking the one bus up and down Washington Boulevard for my whole first year, looking for work and going to AA meetings.
Yep.
I know something about what it takes to come from having nothing and building up into something, and the skill sets that are required that kind of get like forged out of the heat of like, oh my God, how am I gonna, like, this was my last month of my grandma helping with the sober living, like this whole $800 ticket, which was scholarshiped, like it was a reduced rate, is on me now. Like how am I gonna do this? I got a part-time job at the vape shop on Washington. I got a part-time job working with one of the other guys in the house who was a plumber, being his assistant or bitch, or like digging his holes or whatever. And I got a part-time job cleaning pools through another guy in the house. So I'm working 3 part-time jobs. Then I hear about this sober living that's opening. I got 9 months sober or whatever, and they're looking for a live-in overnight guy. So I go talk to them, and through a friend in AA got linked up, and they're like, great, you're the new overnight guy. So I'm like living at a sober living as the live-in overnight watchman, and then in the daytime working 3 part-time jobs just to make it all work. My ability to be consistent and show up prepared grew. And I went from just like showing up and being a worker to being somebody who brought a little value and a brain that was turned on to their position. And thankfully, other doors started to open for me.
You showed up and you said yes.
Exactly. Yeah. That's where it all started.
And that's all it is.
That's where it all started.
That's all it fucking is. And I don't think people like understand how simple it can be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, because it's the same as the working out. They're not getting the results.
Yeah.
When I don't get the results from day 3 of me showing up, I'm like, why am I showing up here?
Right.
I haven't gotten anything yet.
That's because it comes back to we are creatures of immediate gratification. We want that immediate dopamine hit, and they don't. And people and as alcoholics want that immediate dopamine hit, and we're not willing to wait for the delayed gratification, which feels 10 times better.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know, seeing the results come back from months of work and pay off dividends is so much more gratifying than the immediate gratification of like a dope hit.
100%.
Yeah.
Way more.
100%.
And it leads to a life beyond your wildest dreams.
Right.
It's true.
As it says in the big book.
So, nothing. Coming to LA with nothing, right? Suiting up, showing up, doing what you needed to do, 9 months sober, live-in manager, night manager, which fuck, dude.
Overnight guy, but they gave me a bed there. Like sleep there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then now.
Yeah, so thank God I'm in the middle of a passion project, which I'm just like so stoked about. And it's, again, I just have like, I feel like dozens of people to say thank you to. And it can be challenging for me at times to like give myself credit and be like, oh yeah, I've really worked fucking hard in this 10 years or whatever. But basically through those different doors opening, I got CADACT, which is the Drug and Alcohol Counselor of California license thing.
Yeah.
Through loving employers, they like said, go do this. We want to like see you build your skill set and whatnot. They invested in me, and I went and got that. And I counseled people in treatment, in dual diagnosis, mental health issues and addiction issues treatment, with a really good program for the next 7 years ish. And I was running groups, doing individual sessions in this program, and I noticed a pain point in treatment, a particular one. I think there's a lot of pain points in everything. I could find pain points in sober living models, treatment models. Jamba Juice, I'm sure, has pain points. It's like, you name it. It's like there's stuff that could be better all the time. That's just like the perspective I take on things. And I saw a pain point in outpatient treatment with young dudes.
Yeah.
The 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 crowd, our crowd, when I was 22, I saw a lot of guys snoozing in groups that were okay groups and were things that they should probably be engaging in, and that in their better moments could acknowledge like, oh yeah, I really should take this seriously and try to improve. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like in that vehicle of a classroom model with a therapist at the front, it was just challenging for them to stay engaged. So I was always the first one to volunteer to take guys like on experiential days. So I would then turn around and take the whole community out on a hike and run group at like the top of the hike, because we would be able to do those kinds of things. And I saw totally different versions of this dude. It was like, oh, he's way more engaged, way more connected, way more turned on and active. And like, this guy needs to be moving every day. How do we make every day experiential day for this guy? So that's where this new idea got born out of. And myself and a partner, a co-founder, opened a program about 5 months ago called Antidote. And it is a non-clinical coaching model focused toward young men, and kind of acknowledging that there's a current issue that we're facing with young people getting stuck. And it comes from the idea of there being a lack of rite of passage experiences in our culture. A lot of other cultures do rites of passage really well. And that's focusing on those transition times, preteen to teen, teen to adult being probably the most significant. Yeah. What is adulthood? It's a really good question.
What is adulthood?
Like, what is adulthood? What does it mean to be an adult? Is
self-sufficient?
It's an age thing? Or please.
I think self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
no longer depending on your parents to provide for you. Yeah. Self-sufficient. I think it's probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
You know? Do you just a quick question, do you know Brian Meyerhofer?
No.
Okay.
It doesn't sound familiar. Maybe if I saw a face though. I'm better with faces than names.
Yeah, never mind. Just wondering. He's doing a lot. He's very similar in the coaching space, men's health. Figured like if you guys are all in it.
Yeah, sweet. I'd love to meet him.
Yeah,
I would love to meet him.
Similar space.
So we acknowledge young dudes are getting stuck,
Yeah.
And at what point of there being this mass volume of young people getting stuck in our society do we stop pathologizing it and saying it's a disorder and say, oh no, it's actually normal?
Yeah.
It's actually, I'm not saying shooting heroin.
No.
I'm saying getting stuck in a variety of different ways.
Like not being able to get off your mom's couch and find a job and move out.
Playing video
games all day. Scrolling on your device.
And all
for hours
exactly.
and hours and hours a day because that's the dopamine hit you get.
Exactly.
You know? And being,
And although I was in a rural place at 15, I could close my eyes and think, what kind of support did I need then to possibly change the trajectory I went down?
Yeah.
That it opens up to a lot of fantasy, what could be. And I'm not even, it's like theorizing, like, oh, here's what people need. But I think when I bring it back small, most of us can agree that we're not doing a great job supporting young people in the new world that we're living in with all this information and stimulation. What are we doing to support those transitions where, oh, now you have responsibility? That's what we're talking about with self-supporting stuff,
right.
like to be self-sufficient.
Yeah.
You have response. You go from dependent to independent, or at least interdependent with other people in your community.
Sure.
That's the ideal. We're doing very little as a society to honor that transition and really bring some ritual to it and to bring some meaning to it and to bring some good support to it in a way that's normalized.
Yeah.
That's not like, oh, you have to go to treatment because you need help because you have a mental health condition.
Yeah.
No,
Everybody has anxiety now, dog.
Dude.
Everybody.
It's it's such bullshit,
it's
bro.
all bullshit, you know?
It's such
like
bullshit.
When people tell me they suffer from anxiety, I'm like, who doesn't? I mean...
Yeah, but it's also like, it's social media, bro. It's all social media is doing.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that's all it is. I've ran from the cops and I haven't felt anxiety. You know what I mean? Like, I just got to get away.
Right.
And it's like, it's not until like you're looking at Instagram, you're comparing yourself, and then your thought is, how can I get this? Why isn't my life like this yet? Like, how can I start making money? You know what I mean? And there's two, I think, separate avenues, like trains of thought that can go forward from that. And one is, you know what? Like, I see these people doing it. I know I can do it. Let's do it. Right. And it's not anxiety. It's just like almost a little bit of motivation. Right.
Totally.
But then there's the people that are so bewildered by the thought of success and working hard and trying to navigate through that life that they, you know, and also because what social media is showing them is like, you need to be cared for and loved and you know what I mean? And like, okay, sure. But like to this point where it's like, you're not loving me, so I can't do what I need to do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like almost express that in order for you to like feel okay, other people need to love you.
Right.
You know what I mean? When the reality is like, no, I have to love myself enough to want to change something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's
know?
anybody. And that's anybody at any place in their life.
Anybody
at any place in their life.
And that's what had to change for me. My dad at 18 was like, get the fuck out, bro.
Right.
Get out. And you know what? It, like you said,
Greatest
the best
thing you could have done. Greatest
the
thing you
best
could have
thing
done
my
for
dad
him.
could do for me was that.
Yep.
Exactly. And and again, it wasn't like this like I'm a victim thing, right? Like it was this like, fuck you, all right, I'm out.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, let's go. I'm gonna get my apartment, and I did, and I got high, and I burned my shit to the ground.
I'll go. I
you-
can do this.
Yeah.
Have you ever read this book? It's called The Coddling of the American Mind.
No.
It's a great book. I forget what the author's name is, but he describes as to like why the new generation is having this failure to launch issue and why
I'm glad you said that term.
they get so also in mostly he focuses on college students being so physically hurt, like feeling the same level of a physical pain when they are confronted with ideas that are different from theirs and opinions that are different than theirs. And he puts it in that context and looks at it with that issue, but he focuses it on the upbringing of these kids when they were overly coddled by their parents. And this he had coined this term called safetyism, where these kids were never allowed out of their parents' sight. You know, and these kids didn't let their parents didn't let these kids.
It started
go out
in the 90s.
Yeah, go out and like early 2000s, but
because of kidnappings. I think.
Yeah, the kidnappings.
Yeah,
and
everybody got scared that their kids were going to get kidnapped.
1 or 2 or 3 kidnapping stories. Everyone was like
keeping their kids in the yard and the fence, can't leave. Yeah,
you ever see those kids that walk around in the mall with their parents
on the leash?
On a fucking leash?
Disneyland
on a leash, bro. That's insane. Like, I remember the first time I saw that, my jaw dropped to the floor. I was, what the fuck?
Right.
You know, my upbringing, and I think this is a huge part of like what led to me being self-sufficient, not getting caught up with that, was my parents let me do whatever the fuck I want.
Right.
You know, they weren't helicopter parents. They let me, you know, we lived on a hill and it took 20, 30 minutes to walk down that hill, but they would let me walk down there alone.
At what
around
age?
The neighborhoods around 8, 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be with other kids though,
right.
too.
Yeah.
You know,
riding your bike around town, just doing stuff,
doing
right?
shit. Like my parents had
I had no cell phone,
no cell phone, nothing. My parents were just like,
right.
yeah, go do it. Like, you know,
that's an important piece though. No cell phone.
Yeah.
These kids all got this. They're separated. COVID accelerated something that was already happening, which was the disconnect, which I agree with you, started when people started keeping their kids inside out of fear.
Yeah.
If ever we're doing something as a society solely based off of fear, I hope for the love of God that we're all taking a moment to reflect and think like, is this really what we should be doing? You know what I mean? It's some more like spiritual principle applied to the macro lens of like, are we all reacting out of fear? We're doing the same thing in many ways to fentanyl.
Yeah.
And I don't want to like downplay the fentanyl deaths, but it's still, it gets fear mongered a little bit.
Yeah.
It is a serious thing, but the statistics aren't there that for like parents to be breaking open their kids' Kit Kat bars on Halloween to make sure there's not fentanyl inside. Like that's where we're at, and it's fear based.
Yeah. I mean, but that was even since I was a kid. Like,
no, yeah, but you know
it was razor blades.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting?
One crazy dude did it.
No. You know what's interesting? There has never been a case of that.
Never.
There has never been a
Somebody
case of
just
someone putting a
propagated
needle or a fucking razor blade in any of their candy.
It was
for
just
Halloween.
like, it was just fear. It was just sold to us with fear, which is like,
Because fear sells.
fear sells. That's why marketing campaigns use fear.
Fear
Socks
sells.
weren't a thing until some marketer was like,
My feet are cold.
My feet, like, let's sell these things. How are we going to sell them? Oh, your feet smell unless you use socks.
Right. It's not hygienic. You're going to get gangrene.
You get gangrene. And then they sold us socks.
Yeah.
And now we wear socks.
Yeah.
You know?
I always joke about it. Like
Not me, baby.
The first person who put water in a jug and moved it somewhere else and sold it is like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's deep stuff.
Yeah.
That's real deep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the terms that gets thrown around a lot in these conversations is failure to launch.
Yeah.
And it's a term that I hate because it implies that there's a successful way to launch. It's like it's a totally shame-based term.
Yeah.
It's like you failed to do something that most people are able to do. And again, to the normalizing side, it's like, who is launching successfully these days, and what is the metric of a successful launch? Is it a college degree?
Yeah.
Is it not using drugs? Is it waiting until you're married to have a kid? It's like you ask 100 different people, you're going to get 100 different answers.
Yeah.
There's so much information out there right now where we just can, you can Google, why have I had 2 headaches this week? And you'll get everything from tumors in your brain to your diet to blue light exposure.
Yeah.
Depending on what get these glasses to eliminate blue light and your headaches will go away. It's like you can't make sense out of what's real and what's not real.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
But that to me is like the problem with kids and social media.
So here's the term, the rebrand from failure to launch: adaptive avoidance. Mm-hmm. When I think about myself as a young person projecting into my future, what am I going to do with my life? Mm-hmm. There was a significant level of overwhelm stepping out that far in my mind of am I going to go to college? How am I going to make a lot of money? How am I going to find love? Do I look okay enough? Do I have that fucking committee? It's like projecting like that into the future. We call it future tripping in some circles. Is like looking out into my future of like how I'm going to launch into adulthood is extremely overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it's very challenging to bring it back to, oh, just take the next right step, do what feels right, and get some good guidance and someone to help you out. It's so overwhelming to look at this big picture. You're looking at the whole mountain, not just your next couple steps. So we adapt into safety. Oh, I'm just going to stay in what's safe.
Yeah.
And we don't want to go take adult risks and do hard things and potentially fail because we have all this information out there that allows us to compare ourselves to other people and make the whole idea of becoming a man feel like 6 tons of bricks on top of our shoulders.
Yeah.
The young men are suffering.
Yeah.
And they're overwhelmed and they're adapting into avoiding it. It's what we're seeing. It's what we're seeing. And the whole idea of antidote is to provide a normalized tether to good, supportive, positive male role models who know something about navigating this world that's increasing in complexity. It's only getting more and more complex. Welcome to AI.
Right.
Are you kidding me? Stuff's about to get weird, and we're not properly arming these young people, addicts, alcoholics, or not, with some tools to navigate it and a way to support each other. And I'll tell you, dude, when it was time for me to get sober, it was no thought in my mind to be in touch with my best friend since 5 years old immediately and let him know, like, dude, like I'm needing help. I'm fucked up. I'm this, I'm that. Because I had so much connection with this guy through my childhood, because I didn't have cell phone, because I didn't have safety parents. I was allowed to go be with the kids, and we really trusted each other in my community. Like me and my friends, we had real intimate male bonding in our childhood. So I had people to go to when it was time for me to go get help, and I was about to do a really scary thing. And I talk to guys right now who are 22, who at that time 10 years ago were 12, who have come up through their teens with these devices and with this lack of connection, and they don't have anybody to talk to. So their parents send them to therapy. Right into like overly clinically saturated worlds where they get diagnoses, and now they get to start talking about their anxiety and their symptomology. And when I hear a 16-year-old talk about his anxiety symptoms, I get so freaked out. I'm like, who's clinicalized this young boy? So like, where's the normalcy in this and him needing some buddies?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just that, it's also just that labeling your, like,
Totally.
I think when it's really dangerous for these kids to start labeling themselves at such a young age with depression, anxiety, whatever disorder that they have, that's been because they've been put into therapy and over therapized because their parents couldn't take the fucking device out of their hand.
Right.
Yeah. And also too, like if you look on TikTok and like these influencers, right, are talking about the feelings that go along with these, disorders, anxiety, depression, whatever, they're influencing young minds to, oh, if I feel this way at all, I have this.
Right.
Right. And that's like not how it works.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's like they come up and they're like, it's cool to have this thing.
Right.
So-and-so on TikTok or Instagram says they have it. So it's cool. It's cool to be that way.
Right.
And it's gross.
And
it's gross that like that's what's happening to kids.
It is.
You know?
The most I've ever gotten pissed off at a TikTok post was this influencer, got millions of views. They were showing off all of their prescription bottles of like all of the
psych meds
that they need to stay baseline, and they're like glamorizing it, and they don't understand how unhealthy that is. How unhealthy viewpoint is to glamorize these things. Because yes, these meds work for people that really, really need them. And I think they should be taken over a short period of time while they help develop healthy coping skills and healthy ways to deal with their depression and anxiety. But they shouldn't be taken over the long term.
Totally.
And they see people getting attention from this stuff. And that's what leads to, I think, like, this person has millions of views. If I have that, I'll get attention.
And especially with kids being diagnosed with ADHD. It was a huge epidemic when I was a kid.
Totally. The Ritalin
decade.
The
Adderall, the Concerta, the Vyvanse. Like, I remember 10th grade, I was put on Vyvanse, and like my whole demeanor changed. Like my whole entire personality changed when I was on that shit. And I continued to take it through college, and then I stopped taking it immediately because I hated the way I felt on it. You know, I couldn't eat, and it made me like just so much more on edge. Like I would snap at people really quick. You know?
Right. And when I talk to somebody who has a mental health disorder or diagnosis that they've been given by a licensed professional and like hear the meds that they're on or what have you, not even like in a judgmental way. Again, like I support psychiatry, like Western medicine to some degree, and psychiatric and specialty doctors and all that. I'm in support mostly, but some of my first questions are always, what's your sleep like? What's your diet like? What's your level of exercise like? And how many novel experiences are you having? Like, does your life feel mundane and boring, or are you going out and doing things that are exciting for you? Because if you're going to talk to me about symptoms of depression, I really think you should make sure that all those things are dialed in before jumping into the pill route.
Exactly.
Personal
and that's
absolutely
100% agree. It's add social in there too.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So because we are
meaningful
social
connections.
creatures, meaningful connections.
Yep, exactly.
And like that's the thing is our Western medicine is so quick to put a pill down your throat because it's what makes money for the pharmaceuticals. Than they are to give you a holistic approach to your mental health disorder. You know, and I get it. Like, if you're about to kill yourself and that's all you could think about,
of course, or fluidly psychotic, or
like
of course,
absolutely psychotic and hallucinating and having auditory hallucinations or visual hallucinations, and yes, we need to stabilize you with medication. But if you're just feeling like you got the blues, or you're sad, or you're in a rut, like, let's try and change that before sticking a pill down your throat.
Right. But this is all very non-PC dialogue to be having, because one of the viewers with an anxiety disorder feels very attacked right now. And that's the other thing about society too, is that everybody needs to be feeling safe all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
The safety thing from before.
That comes back to that,
totally.
you know, the main motif of coddling of the American mind is that when presented with viewpoints that are differing from your own, a lot of these people feel physical pain.
Right.
The same level of pain that they would feel physically, that's how they feel when being confronted by opinions and views that are opposite of theirs. That's why you're seeing when on college campuses, you know, if a speaker, pro-Israel speaker comes in, they are getting booed off of campus.
Charlie Kirk, bro.
The entire, you know, have any conservative speaker come to a college campus, there's going to be protesters, everybody. They need to create safe spaces for these kids so they could have a safe space to be in because there's a conservative person coming to, you know.
Right.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, you know. And there, like I said, holistic methods need to be attacked first and need to be executed.
Change your thinking.
And if somebody spends a couple months getting all those things locked in and living an optimized way of life and they're still struggling with anxiety, I'm not the anti-anxiety med police or the anti-whatever. It's like, please, by the love of God, go get the help that's needed. But it just it feels like the order's wrong. The convenience factor comes first. The profitability factor is coming first. But thankfully, I feel like we as a society have become wise to it pretty quickly. Most people who I talk to don't love psychiatric efforts first anymore, and I think that's a good sign too.
That's a good sign. And did you know, like, America consumes like 80% of the world's pharmaceuticals?
I believe it.
You know,
did you know that general practitioners prescribe 70% of the psychiatric meds, not psychiatrists?
Really? Wow. That is.
Well, they get paid per script.
They have every ability to prescribe just like anybody else, and most people go see GPs. And when they have depression, then put them on an antidepressant. Try this one out, see how it goes. Come back, talk to me.
It's my God.
It's literally the conversations go down like that, bro.
Exactly.
It's like crazy.
Your insurance it makes it $2. Great.
Yeah, try this one
You know
out.
what I mean?
Try this.
If you have any suicidal ideations, you come back. You promise?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Whoa, dude.
You know. So, where could people find out about your business?
Antidote.
Yeah, cool.
Antidote.
Appreciate it.
Where can people find out about it? how can we get people over to you?
The gram is, after all this talk about the demonic nature of social media, the Instagram handle.
Don't worry, we run also just a point of irony of how ironic that whole conversation is. We run a social media company,
yeah,
and
but
this
that's
is on
different.
social media.
fucking
You're
different.
viewing this on social media, but put your phone down after this and go take a walk.
Take 5
you
minutes,
know?
30-minute walk.
Go take a 30-minute walk.
Set some
get
intentions
some sun
for
on
your
your
day.
skin. Feel good.
Yeah.
Call somebody. Go to have a human interaction.
Dope.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. But so yeah, we got socials too. The Instagram handle is @Antidote Lab. The catch is that we invented the word antidote. It's not spelled ANTI, antidote. It's spelled ANTE,
Okay.
DOTE. Anti with an E is a yeah, exactly. It's a different prefix,
Yeah.
and it means before.
Yeah,
So like in a
before.
game of poker, you ante up. That's
Yeah.
what you put in the pot before. So antidote would be the preventative measures that can be taken before the poison is administered.
Yes.
So it's ANTEDOTE Lab LAB is the Instagram handle, all one word.
I love that.
The
I love
website is www.antidotelab.com. So we have 2 facilities. We have the lab, which is on Westwood and Pico. All the information's on the website and socials, and that's a 5,500 square foot rec space. Clayton's been by to see it.
It's
Okay,
sick.
wow.
Half court basketball,
sick.
heavy bags, jiu-jitsu area, cold
Nice.
plunge, steam sauna, media lounge. Really just trying to take all of the good parts of healing communities and smash them together and
Yeah.
declinicalize it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
bring more of a coaching, good mentorship vibe. It's open 9 to 6 Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
We do family workshops on a donation base on Saturdays where families in the community can just come in with their son or loved one and do some family circle workshops. But it's essentially embodied healing. So we're doing experiential group therapies with men. There's a little bit of fun and physical. We're playing games. We're getting the heart rate up. And there's
Nice.
a little bit of circling up emotional support. Here's what's going on with me. I need to check in about it, and holding
Good.
space for one another in men's groups for
Yeah.
young men to support young men and walk each other through difficult points in their life, particularly
Amazing.
transitions. Then we got a house, which is a 90-day intensive life skills program. So that's going to be more, you move in, you live in, you do the antidote lab programming a couple hours a day, kind of like a treatment individual would go to outpatient, but they live in the house, and it's a 90-day life skills house where we're
Okay.
bringing in cooking teachers, cleaning instructors, budgeting professionals. So we're working on finance, personal finance goals, diet, we're bringing in nutritionists, doing the grocery shopping with us. The idea is that we can have a 90-day intensive to take a guy who is adaptively avoidant or a failure to launch and put him through a boot camp and really do an intensive for some life skills so that they can exit with a set of habits that will propel them into the next chapter.
Yeah.
100%. Do you guys help them with like resume building?
Exactly.
And, like higher education preparation, all that stuff?
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's not a behavior mod. It's not like
No.
if you mess up, you're getting punished
With words or something like that,
exactly.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all at a I want to be here basis.
Yeah.
You know
It's
what I
want to
mean?
improve myself.
Yeah,
I'm here for
exactly.
self-improvement. And these programs, this is for everybody listening, these programs work the best when you want to do it, not when you're being forced to do it by the court, not when you're being forced to do it by your family or your friends or your job, or you feel even the need to do it. It's when you want to do it and you put in the effort. And with that, I'll say thank you so much for coming out. I really
Thank
love
you for
everybody.
having me, gentlemen.
I really love this conversation, man.
Yeah,
I really did.
appreciate it.
So much good stuff to say. So thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank
guys.
you.
Looking forward to working with you in the future.